to that point. And there are times where you just say no. It just has to be. And that's what I'm doing by switching the Wi-Fi off. It's just I don't explain to him. By the way, the reason why I'm telling you I'm switching the Wi-Fi off is because you can't watch YouTube anymore, because Mum and Daddy are going to pray now. And we want to make Salah, and Salah is important because it's a fard. Allah says, Salah, do you understand, Beta? No. So you just, he's not going to switch the Wi-Fi off. Later go into the verse. So there are times where it's just, stop it. You just can't go. You can't play with so-and-so. You know, and that's part of parenting. Any others before dancing? Right, dancing, just to clarify, the scholars of fiqh say that dancing is permitted, or certain types of dancing is permitted. Even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Ethiopians arrived in the Prophet ﷺ's time, and they stood and they danced like so. They said, Muhammadun Abdun Salihun, Muhammadun Abdun Salihun, and this is the actual dance that they did. And the Prophet ﷺ stood and he watched them, and he said nothing. And the hadith, كان الحبش يرقصون بين يدي رسول الله. And in another hadith, Sayyidatina Aisha came and she heard them dancing. And she said to the Prophet ﷺ, who of course is her husband, but there's a big age gap, so she's almost like his daughter. So she climbed onto his shoulders because she wanted to see them dancing. And her face pushed against the door of the house so she could see. And the Prophet ﷺ allowed her to watch, and then he put her down and he says, Dunukum bani ya bani arfida. He says, continue with what you were doing. And then he referred to their tribe. So he allowed dancing to take place. What becomes haram? What becomes haram is this dance was the body, the movements were, generally speaking, respectful. There's nothing lewd, nothing sexual. There's no involved in the dance. When this part of the body moves over to that part of the body, or this part of the body moves to that part of the body, then it's a movement which is not considered to be permitted in Islam. That's the scholars of dancing have said, they are the rules of dancing. Is that certain types of dancing is forbidden. Likewise, when I said the Imam led the dance, it was only men. The women had their own dance, and they'd started an hour before we got there, because they have no adab. And they don't need to, because they don't need to wait for the Imam. The men were shy, naturally they're shy. But once the Imam leads the festivities, yeah! It's time for party. Whereas the women, they can just dance anytime they like, because they're on their own. And when women get together to dance,
nobody can stop them.
let them. Well, why would you want to stop them? I mean, I know. I said that Sarah is actually on she's on 24 hours of oxygen. She dances with her oxygen tank. I have no idea. But some of these other women came and says, wow, your wife is such a good dancer. I'm thinking, what? How does she dance with the oxygen tank? And there was one occasion she went to one of these women's gatherings in a wheelchair. Literally, I took her to the gathering in her wheelchair. Sometimes she walks, sometimes she doesn't. But she actually went in her wheelchair, and that was one of the days they said, she's such a cool dancer. And I never asked her to explain. But all I know is that she was happy. And all I know is that all the other girls had a great time. And they say, my wife is the best dancer. So I can go to the mosque and say, you know whose wife is the best dancer among all of you guys? It's the Imams. So that's the rulings as far as I understand about dancing. Any further questions about, please?
I have a question about music.
Sorry?
I have a question about music.
Please.
If one wishes to take up an instrument as a hobby, is that permissible?
The question is it permitted to take up an instrument as a hobby? When I was once talking with somebody, I never mentioned to Sarah before we were married that I knew anything about music, but I was talking with a guy who also became Muslim, and he said, so what do you think is the best guitar? And I said, well, it depends what you're playing. I mean, if you're into it, the Gibson Les Paul. But me personally, I prefer the Fender Stratocaster. And this guy looked at me and said, wow, you had a Strat? And then and then Sarah was thinking, I thought I married a sheikh. She looked at me, I thought I married a sheikh. And then when we got home, she says, you know, I asked you to teach me Quran, and I know you've started. Would you teach me guitar as well? And I said, no. The reason why was because that's part of the past, and I don't want to waste time with a guitar. Personally, I don't have an interest in playing guitar. I don't want to be in a band, and I don't particularly want to teach guitar. I've got more important things to teach. I said no to that question. If she then asked me, can I learn guitar from somebody else, then I would have said yes. Because I don't see any harm as long as it doesn't distract her from the bigger picture. And I think she would get the balance right. If I thought she couldn't get the balance right, I would have probably said, I don't think this is a good idea. And because she's a really good wife, me saying, I don't think that's a good idea, she won't do it. So my answer would be, it depends. There are people that I know that have really understood life and understood rhythm and time and organisation through their music. And learning a musical instrument has actually fine-tuned their ear, and there's been lots and lots of benefits to music, and there are actually links between learning music and learning languages. Neurologically, there's a lot of science behind connecting the two learning paths, so to speak. So there are lots of benefits in learning a musical instrument, but I think it depends on who's asking the question and what the circumstances are. Right? I really think that Amir is going to kill me if I don't get on with some of the other questions. So I'm going to leave music for now and move on to the second question. Can anybody remember what the 5 criteria were? I asked you to make notes. I hope you did write them down. The reason why I hoped you write it down was because the second question is, how do you choose a spouse? So if you know why you're choosing your spouse, then it should make it easier to understand who to choose. If you know why you're choosing that person, because Amir gave me a simple question, teach us about choosing a spouse. You know what marriage is? So what's the first one? First of the 5. Children. Right, the Prophet ﷺ, this is where Sarah would say Ghazali is a sexist and ageist, is that he recommends that you choose a woman who is likely to bear children. Or a woman should choose a man who is likely to produce children. So obviously you can't make those tests, but there's some rough criteria involved in that. And one of them is that, going back to that hadith about choose, the hadith was choose al-wulud al-mulud is those who can give children and are beautiful. Why does he mention beauty here? It's because the act of nikah requires attraction. And if your spouse is ugly, then you're not likely to want to do nikah. And therefore, the correct position is that you should actually see the person before you marry them. And if you don't have any attraction, then perhaps it's not the best person for you. So the first criteria actually helps you define. It's not exclusive because there are other criteria. And also, attraction is more than just physical appearance. Because going back to what Sarah said, she said, take another wife. I'm thinking, why would I want to take another wife? I'm happy in the situation I am. And that happiness is not just simply physical. It's spiritual, it's mental, there's a lot to it. And sometimes you just choose somebody because they're attractive, but not necessarily beautiful, if you know what I mean, or classical beauty. So that's the first one. And then age. And it's true, if you want to have children, don't marry older women that are beyond childbearing age. It's just, but if that's not the priority of the 5, then marry. That's the first one. What's the second one?
Bridge.
Kasra shahwat. Breaking the desires. I should have kept my notes, shouldn't I? No, I'll try and remember. Kasra shahwat is connected to the first one, is that you must actually find some physical attraction in this. And if you're not physically satisfied in a marriage, then it's likely to end up not being satisfied and not being successful. To the extent that the qadi the judge can actually command a husband to fulfill his duties to the wife, and likewise the other way around. And there are cases that I know of where a woman will complain to the qadi to say, he doesn't satisfy me. And the qadi's called the husband and said, do you do such and such? Do you not? And she says, no. He says, well, you have to. Go back and fulfill your wife's your duties to your wife. So these things are a part of that kasra shahwat. Why? Because if the husband or the wife are not satisfied in the relationship, then it could not fulfill this point. Third one? Right, so if she can't iron, is that what you're telling me? If she can't iron, this is an interesting one because there's more to it. It's true that those sort of physical things are quite important, and I've probably learnt more about that since Sarah became ill, because she actually knows that I'm totally independent when it comes to. People used to ask her, he seems to be quite a hands-on father. You know, whenever it's time to change nappies, you know, he's out there first. I mean, even before Sarah was ill, Idris used to sit on my lap, and occasionally I had to actually stop the dars to say, excuse me a minute, I just need to do something, and I'll take him out, change his nappy, and come back. People are thinking, the Shaykh in the middle of the dars is changing nappies? This is not what we expected. And sometimes people would walk out and say, what kind of phony Shaykh is this? And that's fine. And then other people, wow, this is cool. So he's the most feminist Shaykh I've ever met. He even changes nappies in the middle of the dars. And so she knows that I'm completely independent. She was in hospital for 4 months, and it didn't cause me a problem in terms of looking after Idris or looking after the house, looking after the guests. That brings its problems. Because if you've been in a coma, and you've recovered from a coma, and you've come out of 4 months in hospital, and you come out into a new home because we had to move house because we lived on the 2nd floor, now we live on the ground floor. It's a new house with new furniture, and a new husband, and a new child, and you can't do anything. Mentally, it really affects her. So when she makes my sandwiches, I don't really need sandwiches. And there's times, please don't ever quote this to, there's times where I actually go to work and I park around the corner when I come home and I eat my sandwiches just before I come home, just so I've eaten the sandwiches that she's made. And then I come home and she asked, how were the sandwiches? I said, lovely, darling. Because I didn't have time to eat them during the day, and to be honest, I didn't really need them. But she made the effort of making the sandwiches. And can you imagine what would happen if I just bring them home? And I have brought them home occasionally where I've forgotten to eat them on the way home. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, so sorry, I just forgot. And I know how hurt she feels because she didn't make the sandwiches. And likewise, if I offer to iron the shirts, it depends. Sometimes she'll be offended, and sometimes she'll just, thanks. And you need to be able to know what's required in your relationship, because a woman never actually has to cook your food. In terms of the Sharia, in terms of the law, the rights of a husband does not include her cooking. And most men don't know that. And most men hate me when I point that out. And most women think, yeah, this is the Shaykh. Why? Because in terms of the law, she doesn't have to. She's not disobedient just because she doesn't cook. But if she does cook, you should recognize that this is a gift, and you should appreciate it as a gift, and she should feel that this is something I'm doing for the person that I love. And when that happens in a relationship, it's as close as perfect as you're going to get. You know, and to be honest, there's times where I've just thought, yeah, it doesn't get better than this. And to be honest, this was only after she became ill. Not that I didn't love her before, but this understanding of what Tadbir al-Manzil was about. So when you choose around what kind of wife it's going to be, you have to choose somebody that can fit that kind of understanding. And the wife has to choose somebody who can understand that relationship, about what I need. When do I need to cook? And when do I need to be taken for a 5-course meal? Because women like to be taken for meals, you know. Not every day, because it gets really boring and really expensive. You know, when you spend more money on restaurants than you do on rent, then you know there needs to be some balance in your life, and I've been there. Plus, it puts a lot of weight on. So, getting that Tadbir al-Manzil, but more important about Tadbir al-Manzil is making you feel comfortable. So you've got to choose somebody who makes you feel comfortable. If you meet some, and that's why when people meet, they need to spend time together.